This lamb was born just a few weeks ago. Her mother is standing next to her. These baby ducks were born from their mother, swimming ahead of them. And this child is the son of his mother and father. These are all examples of the process of reproduction. How does reproduction occur, and why is it so vital to the continuation of a species? What structures and processes are involved in human reproduction? And how do organisms develop during the early stages of growth? During the next few minutes, we're going to explore these processes and others as we investigate reproduction and development. All living things come from previously living things. This is a fundamental principle of biology. Whether it be a microorganism, such as an amoeba, a bird, such as this juvenile gull, a reptile, such as this alligator, or mammals, such as these coyote pups, all originated from pre-existing organisms. The general process by which living things create new organisms is referred to as reproduction. Reproduction is essential to the continuation of a species. If a species fails to reproduce, it becomes extinct. The structures, means, and methods by which different species of organisms reproduce vary widely. During the next few minutes, we'll focus specifically on the process of reproduction and development in humans. Males and females have reproductive systems with different structures and functions. You decide what sex is responsible for the production of eggs. Females are responsible for the production of eggs. Fertilization and development also take place in the female reproductive system. The production of sperm occurs in the male reproductive system. Sperm are male gametes or sex cells. Sperm cells are haploid, meaning they carry half the genetic content necessary to form a zygote. The other half of the genetic content comes from the woman's egg. Fertilization is the process of male and female gametes joining together to form a zygote. Sperm are produced in the testes. They're contained in the sac-like scrotum. An important male hormone called testosterone is also generated in the testes. During puberty, as the male body goes through hormonal and physical changes, the testes begin to produce increased amounts of testosterone, initiating sperm production and promoting the development of secondary sex characteristics, like the growth of body hair and the deepening of the voice. Each testis consists of small coiled tubes called seminiferous tubules. There are between 300 and 600 tubules in each testis. Sperm cells are produced in the seminiferous tubules, but then move to the epididymis, where they mature and are stored. Mature sperm exit the epididymis through a tube called the vas deferens. The two vas deferens empty to the urethra, the same structure through which urine empties. As sperm enter the urethra, the seminal vesicles, Cowper's glands, and the prostate gland secrete fluids into the urethra that nourishes and protects sperm. That fluid mixture is called semen. Once semen exits the penis, it's capable of fertilizing a woman's egg. As we mentioned earlier, the female reproductive system produces eggs that potentially can be fertilized by male sperm to form a zygote. Eggs are created in a woman's ovaries. Ovaries also produce the female hormones estrogen and progesterone. You observe How many ovaries do you see? The female reproductive system includes 2 ovaries. They're only about 4 centimeters long and 2 centimeters wide. However, each ovary amazingly contains about 200,000 small egg sacs called follicles. Each follicle contains an immature egg. While women are born with thousands of egg sacs, only about 500 ever mature during the woman's life. When the egg sac matures, its follicle moves to the surface of the ovary, breaks open, and releases the egg. It's a process referred to as ovulation. The egg then travels through the oviduct, also called the fallopian tube. If fertilization occurs, it happens here. Then the egg travels to the thick-walled muscular uterus. It's in the uterus that the fetus develops. At the bottom of the uterus is the cervix. That's the opening into the vagina, which leads to the outside of the body. Now let's take a look at the female reproductive cycle. In the human female, an egg matures and leaves one of the ovaries about every 28 days. A series of changes in the reproductive system, regulated by numerous hormones in the body, control the reproductive process, broadly referred to as the female reproductive cycle. The female reproductive cycle begins at puberty, which commonly takes place in females sometime between the ages of 10 and 16, but it can vary widely. At this time, secondary sex characteristics also occur, including the development of breasts and the broadening of the pelvis. Let's take a look at some of the steps in the female reproductive system based on a 28-day cycle. 2 distinct processes occur in the female reproductive cycle. The ovarian cycle refers to changes that occur in the ovaries. The changes that occur in the lining of the uterus are referred to as the menstrual cycle. These 2 cycles are primarily regulated by hormones secreted by the hypothalamus, the pituitary glands, and the ovaries. We'll briefly outline these events based on a 28-day cycle using diagrams, but keep in mind the length of a woman's cycle can vary. Let's begin at day 1, when the pituitary glands release 2 hormones: follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH for short, and luteinizing hormone, or LH. FSH stimulates a follicle to develop into an egg. As the follicle develops, increasing amounts of another hormone, estrogen, are produced. Estrogen stimulates the endometrium, that's the lining of the wall of the uterus. It grows new tissue and blood vessels in preparation for the uterus to receive a fertilized egg. When the amount of estrogen reaches a certain level, the pituitary gland releases increased amounts of LH and FSH. This usually occurs around 12 to 14 days in the 28-day cycle. You observe. What happens as the level of LH increased? The high amount of LH triggered the follicle to release an ovum in the process called ovulation. The ruptured follicle then forms a structure called the corpus luteum that releases significant amounts of other hormones, progesterone and estrogen. The extra progesterone and estrogen stimulate the endometrium to grow even thicker. The ovum, released at around day 14, travels through the fallopian tube over several days. This is when fertilization may occur. If it does, the fertilized ovum then becomes embedded in the endometrium, the enriched lining of the uterus, resulting in pregnancy. But if fertilization does not occur, levels of estrogen and progesterone decrease, and the blood-rich endometrial tissue begins to break down. That tissue, along with the unfertilized ovum, leave the body in a process called menstruation. Menstruation, also commonly referred to as a period, lasts approximately 3 to 7 days. The development of a human organism begins with fertilization. Fertilization involves the fusing of a male sperm and a female ovum, also referred to as an egg, resulting in the formation of a zygote. The zygote then slowly moves through the fallopian tube as it gradually undergoes a series of cell divisions, referred to as cleavage. In the process of cleavage, the zygote repeatedly divides and develops into a ball of cells called a morula. After several days, the morula continues to undergo cell division, eventually forming a hollow ball of cells called a blastocyst. After about a week, the blastocyst becomes embedded in the wall of the uterus in a process called implantation. This signifies the beginning of pregnancy. Following implantation, the blastocyst further develops into a 3-layered structure, the gastrula. The 3 layers, referred to as germ layers, eventually give rise to specific body tissues and organs. The outer layer, the ectoderm, develops into the nervous system and skin. The middle layer, the mesoderm, develops into the muscles, bones, kidneys, heart, blood vessels, and reproductive system. And the endoderm, the inner layer, gives rise to the liver, lungs, certain glands, and the digestive system. Following the development of the germ layers, a more complex embryo forms, which has 2 outer membranes, the chorion and amnion. The chorion contributes to an important structure called the placenta, through which gases, nutrients, and wastes are exchanged between the mother and the embryo. The umbilical cord is a tube that connects the embryo to the placenta. Because many dangerous substances, such as nicotine, drugs, and alcohol, can negatively impact the development of the embryo, pregnant mothers are discouraged from using these substances that can be transferred to the embryo. From the 9th week of development until birth, the developing embryo is referred to as a fetus. By the 9th week, the major body systems have developed. By 14 weeks, the hands, arms, legs, feet, nose, eyes, and ears have developed. From about 4 months until birth, the fetus grows rapidly. The length of pregnancy, referred to as the gestation period, is about 9 months in humans. At around 9 months of development, a pituitary hormone called oxytocin increases, which stimulates the birth process. During labor, the uterus contracts rhythmically for several hours, sometimes for many hours. The opening to the cervix widens, and strong rhythmic contractions push the fetus out through the vagina. After the baby is born, it begins to breathe on its own. During the past few minutes, we investigated the fascinating processes of human reproduction and development. We began by discussing the importance of reproduction to the survival of a species. Next, we specifically discussed the structures and functions of the male reproductive system, and then those of the female reproductive system. The complex activities of the female reproductive cycle were highlighted, specifically the ovarian and menstrual cycles. The means by which fertilization of an egg by a sperm were explored. Last, we discussed some of the amazing steps involved in the early development of the human organism, rounding out our discussion of the fascinating topic of human reproduction and Development. Fill in the correct word to complete the sentence. Number 1. The process by which living things create new organisms is Number 2. Male gametes are referred to as Number 3. Are the structures responsible for the production of male gametes? Number 4. The male sex hormone is Number 5. The are responsible for creating eggs and some hormones. Number 6 is the process by which a follicle releases an egg. Number 7 involves endometrial tissue and the unfertilized ovum leaving the body. Number 8. The process of involves the fusing of a male sperm and female ovum. Number 9. The beginning of is signified by the implantation of the blastocyst on the uterine wall. And number 10. The cord is a tube that connects the embryo to the placenta.